Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome. I'm Roger Stone, and this is the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Network. Here on the Roger Stone Show, we talk, eat, sleep, and breathe politics. I'm a veteran of 13 national presidential campaigns, from Nixon to Reagan to Trump, but I'm also an equal opportunity critic of both parties. Back on January 23rd, President Donald Trump ordered the full disclosure of all records held by the federal government pertaining to the assassinations of President John F. Kennedy, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, one of the most important acts of the Trump administration will be in how they handle their disclosures of the JFK files, as well as the others. These are bombshells that have the potential to blow the lid off the deep state and create the consensus needed for very real reform. See, one of the most insidious lies spouted by defenders of the status quo is that agencies like the FBI, the CIA, the ATF, the NSA, and so on, were once noble and proud stewards of the people, but somehow got infiltrated and weaponized by nefarious actors. That is not necessarily the case. These bureaucracies were designed from their inception to attack constitutional freedom, stifle the democratic process, and, if necessary, murder a sitting president to keep their stranglehold on power. The president needs to do a number of things so that the deep state actors cannot evade his full disclosure order and intention. First of all, I believe he must direct all federal agencies, including the Central Intelligence Agency, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the State Department, the Department of Defense, and yes, the Internal Revenue Service, to review materials in their possession and to transmit any and all remaining records related to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy to the Archivist of the United States. You see, not all of the records pertaining to JFK's murder reside in the Kennedy Assassinations Documents Archive. This past week, the president fired the Archivist of the United States, appointed a acting archivist pending the appointment of a permanent archivist who must be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. This act by the president would make it virtually impossible for rogue bureaucrats to hide crucial information pertaining to John F. Kennedy's assassination and to root out any shell game that may be played among these deep state loyalists to continue to keep the public in the dark. The president should also then direct the Archivist of the United States to remove all redactions from the documents in the President John F. Kennedy assassinations record collection, as well as all these other documents I have called for, all within 90 days. The Washington, D.C. swamp loves to release documents, particularly those requested under the Freedom of Information Act, draped in black ink as a slap in the face to transparency and accountability advocates. This cannot be allowed to happen again. After 8 years of Russiagate and the coordinated attacks on Trump, the public knows the criminal nature of their federal government, at least some parts of it, and is finally ready to hear the ugly truth. So the president must rescind the current transparency plan for the Kennedy assassination documents, which has resulted in continued stonewalling by the federal agencies like the CIA. 2017 was mandated by Congress as the year that these documents were first supposed to be released, but President Trump has told me, told Judge Andrew Napolitano, recently told Sean Hannity on the air, that it was CIA Director Mike Pompeo who persuaded him to hold back 20% of this trove of documents. That should give you some idea of what we have coming up in these upcoming disclosures. The CIA JFK Transparency Plan was originally designed as a framework that purposely slows down and blocks the flow of pertinent information. It should be scrapped entirely for the full disclosure process to be worthwhile. Then I'd like to see the president direct the Archivist of the United States to utilize available resources at the National Archives to collect, compile, digitize, and prepare the records for public release within 120 days. And they should be set up in a system which is entirely searchable online, so that you're not getting a data dump that takes days, weeks, maybe even months to parse through. Hard deadlines must be outlined with no excuses as to why they cannot be followed. The bureaucracy must be expected to work quickly in the release of these documents, and any federal employee who holds up the process should be terminated. Then I'd like to see the president direct the Archivist of the United States to utilize all available resources at the National Archives to uniformly digitize these and get them online, again, as soon as possible. These crucial documents must be preserved in perpetuity, available for anyone to look at them and analyze them, as well as for the history of mankind. This is why they must be digitized and put online, as opposed to released in one big dump. Then I'd like to see the president direct the Archivist of the United States and the National Archives to release in full, without reduction, all the documents relating to the assassinations of both Senator Robert F. Kennedy of New York, who was assassinated on the eve of the night of the California primary during the 1968 Democratic primary contest for president, on the night of his greatest victory, as well as all of the documents pertaining to the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, it's important to understand, to get a fuller picture of what has transpired, we also need to get all of the relevant documents from the Dallas Police Department. We need to get all of the relevant documents from the Los Angeles Police Department. And we need to get all of the relevant documents from the Memphis Police Department. Once all of these documents are collected and digitized, they must be released and, again, put in an archive that is easily searched, so the public can crowdsource their analysis with bloggers and researchers and citizen journalists making history and, well, I'm afraid, chronicling the goriest of details. This could work very quickly so that the mainstream media spin machine cannot possibly keep up and cover up. Then I'd like to see the president assign a senior White House staff member to monitor the entire process and ensure that there's full compliance and implementation of the president's plan. Now, after all of this is done, I want the president to establish an independent oversight board to ensure agency compliance. The oversight leaders must consist of dedicated loyalists who have proven records of opposing the deep state. I would suggest that General Michael Flynn would be an excellent person to oversee and chair such an oversight agency. That way we could make sure that nothing is held back and that information that is of a pernicious nature to the deep state will be completely disclosed. Lastly, I would suggest the president direct the Archivist of the United States to request the release of the deed of gift material and solicit any other known assassination-related materials in private collections, which were originally excluded by the original JFK Assassination Documents Release Act in 1993. These should all now be included in the President John F. Kennedy assassinations record collection. The release of the JFK files must be the beginning of an unearthing of substantial government secrets. The federal government has hidden its evil behavior under the veil of national security, in my opinion, for far too long. After the feds have funded and propped up terrorists and committed treason against its own citizen, the national security excuses can no longer hold water. This is the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Network, and we'll be right back.
This is the Roger Stone Show. Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
John F. Kennedy died at approximately 1 o'clock Central Standard Time today here in Dallas. He died of a gunshot wound in the brain. Dr. Berkeley told me it's a simple matter, Tom, of a bullet right through the head.
That was Malcolm Kilduff, who was the acting deputy press secretary for President John F. Kennedy. Everyone who was of age remembers precisely where they were at that moment. Well, everybody but George H.W. Bush, who for 30 years said he couldn't remember where he was. Turns out he was in Dallas. In fact, there were multiple presidents in Dallas. Obviously, John F. Kennedy was there. Vice President and then President Lyndon Johnson was there. Former Vice President Richard Nixon was there because he was in town to speak to a Pepsi-Cola bottling conference. Of course, George H.W. Bush was there, staying at the Sheraton Hotel steps from Dealey Plaza. How the Trump administration goes about ensuring that all of this information is ultimately released will be a true test. As I have outlined, I think that the bureaucracy has every intention of trying to hide some of the relevant documents, and folks, we cannot let that happen. But before leaving office, President Joe Biden awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. That is the highest civilian award that any American can be given to a number of people. It went, for example, to Bono. It went to Hillary Rodham Clinton. It went posthumously to Senator Robert F. Kennedy Sr. There's an award that I strongly agree with. It went to Ralph Lauren, who, as a clothes horse, I do think changed the face of fashion and style in this country. But it also went to people like George Soros. I also liked it when it was given to Denzel Washington, but when it was given to Nancy Pelosi, well, not so much. Now, I feel that there's another American who deserves the Medal of Freedom. Perhaps there's no American who's more responsible for shifting the Republican Party away from the neocon orthodoxy of endless war and big government than former Texas Congressman Ron Paul. With nothing more than the Constitution as his guide, Ron Paul sparked a revolutionary movement that changed the DNA of the Republican Party, paving the way for President Donald Trump's historic victory in 2016 and his miraculous comeback in 2024. Much of what Ron Paul championed became the cornerstone of Donald Trump's America First agenda. At 90 years old, Ron Paul is living proof that one godly man can change the world for good, which is why I have started a petition to urge President Trump to affirm Ron Paul's status as an American hero by awarding him the Presidential Medal of Freedom. You can go to the petition that I have put online at ronpaulmedal.com, ronpaulmedal.com. We're going to deliver the signatures, the list of signatures, to the president. It reads quite simply, whereas the Presidential Medal of Freedom is the highest civilian honor the president can bestow upon a citizen of the United States, and whereas your predecessor, Joe Biden, disgraced this prestigious award by giving it to deep state scoundrels like George Soros, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, Nancy Pelosi, and others, and whereas this honor should be reserved for those who've made the country better, not worse, and whereas there perhaps has been no bigger champion for the ideals of freedom, which our great country was founded on, than former Congressman Ron Paul of Texas, and whereas Ron Paul has fought for freedom and liberty and against neocon and globalist orthodoxy for decades, in many ways paving the way for the MAGA movement that you have led to victory that saves this country. I therefore urge you to award the Presidential Medal of Freedom to former Congressman Ron Paul in order to honor his lifelong commitment and achievements for the cause of liberty and freedom. Again, folks, if you agree with me, you can go to ronpaulmedal.com and sign the petition. No, we're not going to sell or market your names. We are simply going to deliver them to the President of the United States. I want to see Congressman Ron Paul honored while he is still with us. And although he is still in good health and still doing interviews and quite active, the time for this important reward is right now. The other thing I'd like to see is the president or the attorney general to take on real judicial reform. Enjoining the President of the United States from taking any action should require more than a simple biased district court judge. I think it should require a 3-judge appellate panel. That would end this chaos of a federal judge ordering, as they did last week, that the Secretary of the Treasury is not entitled to access the records of the U.S. Department of the Treasury. I happen to believe that the Chief Justice would be sympathetic. I hope that they will bring this reform. Extraordinary week this week in Washington. Pam Bondi confirmed as Attorney General. Robert F. Kennedy confirmed at HHS. Tulsi Gabbard. And up next Thursday, folks, Kash Patel as the head of the FBI. This is the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Network. We'll be right back.
Crazy about a shirtless man.
This episode is brought to you by GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco. Get the most out of your vehicle with GM Genuine Parts and AC Delco original equipment. The only parts designed, engineered, tested, and backed by General Motors. You can find your perfect fit for most makes and models and choose from 3 tiers of parts, including GM OE or gold and silver aftermarket parts. Visit gmparts.com for more information.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back on the Roger Stone Show here at the Red Apple Audio Network. President Donald Trump is working at breakneck speed to change the direction of the American government. It is not unlike turning an ocean liner around, but in many ways, I feel that he will be an even greater president in this new term than he would have been had he been rightfully awarded the presidency in 2020. I think these 4 years in the wilderness and also fighting the tsunami of lawfare against him have prepared him for this moment. He has a fuller understanding now of how Washington works, about how the two-party duopoly works, about how our criminal justice system has been weaponized, and he is moving quickly. Now, he is using tariffs, I think, as an extraordinarily effective weapon to get better trade deals with our trading partners. There are those who criticize his policies. So I decided to go to the man I respect most when it comes to all economic questions. That would be Barry Habib. He is the chief executive officer of MBS Highway. Barry Habib is not only an American entrepreneur, but he is recognized as one of the country's foremost experts on mortgage and the housing industries, but he is far more than that. He is a sage analyst of the American economy. So whether it is the new inflation numbers or the new unemployment numbers, I've always found that Barry Habib tells me both before they happen and after they happen exactly what is happening and what they really mean. He is the author of the #1 Amazon best-selling book, Money in the Streets. I'm honored to call him a friend, but he is truly my favorite economic guru. Barry Habib joins the Roger Stone Show now.
Roger, thank you so much for having me. What a kind introduction. Appreciate you, my friend.
Well, it's only the truth. Let's start with the tariffs. I know President Trump. I've known him for almost 50 years. I think at heart he is a free trader. That means he would love to have free trade if it were possible. But free trade means fair trade, meaning trading deals that are not only good for us, but also good for our trading partners. We have seen him use tariffs as a cudgel to try to get fair trading out of our partners. But what will be the impact of these tariffs should he end up keeping them and putting them in place on the American people?
So, we've already seen that the threat of tariffs can be extremely effective in negotiating. We've seen it with Colombia, we've seen it with Canada, we've seen it with Mexico, and I would imagine that we're going to see it elsewhere in the world. The thing is that, as you know, President Trump has his set of critics, and they're all pointing to these tariffs as it's going to cause inflation, it's going to cause hardship. Can tariffs cause a little bit of pain if they're instituted? The answer is yes, Roger, they can. Can it cause inflation? The way we have to look at tariffs is it is a one-time price reset. It is very different from inflation, which is cumulative and constant. So while it potentially, or possibly a small time horizon, be a price reset higher, what it can do, though, is make it even more effective as a negotiation tool because now it has teeth. Secondarily, sometimes in order to get what you want, and you astutely pointed out that many of the trade deals that we have simply are not fair. And we're getting the short end of the stick for quite a long time. So, it's amazing to me that the same person who says you have to go on a diet in order to achieve a fit body, or you have to exercise or spend time at the gym and, no pain, no gain, they're the most vocal critics that'll say, oh, we don't want any pain at all from tariffs. Sometimes you have to be willing to take a small amount of pain for a small amount of time so that we can achieve goals that give you prosperity over the long run. And I think that's exactly what President Trump is trying to do here.
Now, President Trump has said that he would like interest rates to come down and wants to make home ownership and housing more affordable. How do you think he can achieve this goal?
As we know, home values have gone up a lot. That's tough on first-time home buyers because the disparity between the monthly payment on owning a home and renting a home has widened quite significantly. And it makes it a little bit difficult for someone, maybe a lot difficult for someone. And then you have a lot of misinformation out there that is literally coaching people to say, hey, do not purchase a home. It's cheaper to rent and things like that. Roger, in the United States, there's 136 million households. 91 million are owned. 45 million are rented. Those who own homes have collectively $37 trillion in equity. Those who rent have collectively zero in equity. So, we have to look broader than if we want to try to help people get wealthy, generationally wealthy. A big part of that is real estate. So first of all, the mindset has to change. And secondarily, President Trump is absolutely right when he says he wants to bring interest rates down. Now, the thing about interest rates is that interest rates are typically governed by a few things. There's risk premium of credit worthiness and things like that. But another is that you have to have a real rate of return. So, Roger, for example, if one of your listeners were to put themselves in position, okay, I'm the one lending money, and they want to get a rate of return of, let's just say, 4%. Well, if they want to get a rate of return of 4%, but if inflation is 3%, that's going to eat into it. So what you have to do is you have to combine them both and say, now you can loan money at 7%, and since inflation's 3%, you're getting that real rate of return of 4%. That's after inflation. So that's kind of how interest rates are determined. So as you can see, inflation plays a major role in what the ultimate interest rate would be. So if inflation's lower, you can get your real rate of return at, let's just say, 4%. But if now inflation's 2% instead of 3%, you can offer interest rates on mortgages at 6%. So it's important that we understand the role that inflation plays. Now, because inflation is so important, you would think that the mechanism that we are able to measure inflation would be accurate. But so many things in government data are done in an antiquated fashion, and this is no different. The way that we're looking at these inflation numbers, and whether it be the CPI report or the PCE, CPI is Consumer Price Index, PCE is Personal Consumption Expenditures, these are the two typical measuring sticks for inflation. The Federal Reserve, which is going to set interest rates, they're the ones that are going to be looking at more closely at the PCE. Now, PCE right now is at 2.8%. They want it to be 2%. So they're talking tough. They say, we got to get inflation under control. We got to get inflation. And that's good that they do want to do that. But the problem is they're looking at 2.8%. And I don't believe that inflation is truly at 2.8%. The reason for that, Roger, is because the way that you look at inflation, the biggest component within that 2.8% is called shelter. So shelter is a roof over your head. Now, many people listening probably think that, well, that's your home value or your mortgage payment or things like that. That's not the way the government looks at it. And I can understand why. They look at housing or shelter as a service. So the way to convert that is to look at rents. So they look at what people paying a rent or what an owner of a home would equivalently charge for rent. So that's the way they monitor. And this is the largest component. So it's the most influential aspect. In CPI, it's 45% of it. So now, when we look at how important this is, the problem with the way that the government is looking at the data is it is antiquated. It has an enormous lag. For example, here we are, mid-February. We're in the second part of February. The most recent data that we have on PCE is from December. But it gets a lot worse than that. What happens is that the government can't handle looking at the entire country because it's just too big. So they say, we're going to take the country and slice it up into 6 segments. And we're only going to look at one segment each month, and we're going to rotate through. So that means they're going to look at for example, let's say they're looking at segment 1 this month. Well, when they do, the other 5 segments are backward-looking data. And as you can imagine, one's a month old, one's 2 months old, 3 months old, 4 months old, 5 months old, and one's 6 months old. So therefore, what starts to happen is that in points of inflection when rents are either rising quickly or dropping quickly, and right now they're dropping quickly, the data becomes very old. Now let's add to that another problem. And that problem is that when people are being surveyed for what they're paying in rent, it may be reflective of a lease that they signed 6 months prior to that or 8 months prior to that.
Barry, I'm going to ask you to hold that thought for 1 second while we go to a quick commercial break, and then we'll pick back up with Barry Habib, economic guru.
Now, it's time for Protecting Your Future, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Roger Stone.
In these turbulent times, with Elon Musk and Doge uncovering billions in fraud and waste and corruption, with the national debt spiraling out of control and unsustainable, with the Fed printing money like it's going out of style, now is the time to protect your retirement, to protect your nest egg, your IRA, your 401k. And the best way to do that is by acquiring precious metals like gold and silver. And the people that I trust to do that are the folks at the Colonial Metals Group. You can find them at colonialmetalsgroup.com/stone or go to freegoldguide.com and they'll answer all your questions. So go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/stone today. You'll be glad you did. Now we return to Barry Habib, the Chief Executive Officer of MBS Highway. Barry, I'm delighted to have you. Let's continue.
So there's a big lag, as you could see. The problem with that is that in points of inflection, like you have now, when rents are dropping rather significantly, you're not picking that up. So we're making decisions on what interest rates are based upon old data. Now let's compare it with what's really happening in real time. When you look at any of the many, many choices you have, you can go to CoreLogic, Apartment List, Redfin, Zillow. There are numerous ways that you can examine what the current rental increases are, and they're going up at 1.5% per year. So if we were to use the real numbers and then include that in the weighting for inflation, we'd be at 2% right now. So mortgage rates, 2% inflation. So mortgage rates would really be at 6%, not 7%. And you think about the amount of money that would save. You think about the open doors that it would give to people to purchase homes. So we're just looking at bad data. That's the problem. And it's important because, number one, just like in professional sports, when you added instant replay, it made it more modernized, more up to date, more instantaneous. That made the sport better. With the United States of America, we should be looking at numbers in real time and not making the decisions that affect tens and hundreds of millions of people that is based on wrong data. Roger, the problem with this is under the Biden administration, when Biden used that $1.9 trillion budget buster that we did not need, and then you had all these other programs which were littered with fraud, that contributed, of course, greatly to inflation. But the Fed was complicit. And the reason why the Fed was complicit is because they were looking at old data. Inflation was rising, but because, again, the lag in the most important and largest component, shelter, rents, because of the lag, in real time rents were going up, but the Fed was looking at the old data and they said, oh, we can keep rates at zero. We can keep quantitative easing going. So this is why they put gasoline on Biden's inflation fire. And this is what we're still struggling and suffering with right now. Because remember, Roger, inflation, while the rate of change may come down, the way that people feel it is on a cumulative basis. So we have inflation. It's coming down in its rate of change, but it's not going down in prices. Its prices are going up just more slowly.
When we come back, I'm going to ask Barry Habib more about Janet Yellen's handling of debt issuance and how she's handled things since she became Treasury Secretary. So don't go away. We'll be right back with more of Barry Habib.
This is the Roger Stone Show.
This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. Underwear drawers are like the Wild West. You never know what you're going to pull out or what shape it's in. So upgrade your collection with the buttery soft comfort of MeUndies. MeUndies' signature fabric is as soft as a warm hug from your favorite sweater. Plus, it's breathable and oh so comfy, making it ideal for all-day wear. Get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/Spotify with code Spotify. That's MeUndies.com/Spotify, code Spotify.
Your snacking routine can get a little dull. Time for an Oikos remix. Like a crunchy storm of sea salt praline pretzels, dark chocolate, and butter toffee, showering down into a smooth, creamy yogurt. Enjoy 3 Oikos Remix varieties with epic mix-ins and 11 grams of complete protein per 4.5-ounce serving. See RemixYogurt.com.
My name is Lily, and I've had hidradenitis suppurativa, HS, for years. I finally found some relief since taking Cosentyx. Relief means I can show up more.
Cosentyx secukinumab is prescribed for adults with moderate to severe hidradenitis suppurativa, HS. Don't use if you're allergic to Cosentyx. Before starting, get checked for tuberculosis. An increased risk of infections and lowered ability to fight them may occur, like tuberculosis or other serious bacterial, fungal, or viral infections. Some are fatal. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms like fevers, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, had a vaccine or plan to, or if inflammatory bowel disease symptoms develop or worsen. Serious allergic reactions and severe eczema-like skin reactions may occur. Learn more at 1-844-COSENTYX or Cosentyx.com.
Ask your dermatologist about Cosentyx.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back with Barry Habib, the Chief Executive Officer of MBS Highway, and I think indisputably the country's foremost expert on the mortgage and housing industries, the man I look to for immediate economic analysis whenever there is a major development, such as the release of inflation or unemployment numbers. To get back to our discussion, Barry, what do you think of Janet Yellen's handling of debt issuance when she was the Treasury Secretary?
Well, I didn't really like her as a Fed chair, and I think she was much worse as a Treasury Secretary. She bungled it, Roger. Think about this. When Janet Yellen was issuing debt, she has a choice. Do you want to do shorter term, longer term? Because she could do 1 month, 3 month bills, 1 year bills, or she could do 5, 7 year, 10-year notes, 30-year bonds, things like that. What did she choose to do? When she could have put paper out there for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, at a rate of 1.4, 1.5%, you know what she chose to do? She chose to put out 2 year because she could save 0.75%. I mean, think about the foolishness of that, because then 2 years later, the U.S. government, we are paying 5% on that, 4.5% on that, instead of securing for 30 years 1.5% or so that we could have had. Now, Scott Bessent is much wiser. Now, the idiots out there are saying, well, Scott Bessent's kind of doing the same thing. He's putting out more short-term debt. But he's putting out short-term debt when short-term debt is higher and expect it to come down. So when it rolls over in a year or 2 years from now, we'll get the benefit of the reduction. And why tie yourselves into longer term debt at a higher interest rate when it's going to come down? So Janet Yellen, very foolish. Scott Bessent, very wise. Now, debt is really important. That's why DOGE is so critical, Roger, because it's supply and demand. The money that DOGE saves us means that the government gets into less debt. Less debt means less paper that has to be issued for debt, less that has to support the government, and that also means it can help overall interest rates come down. This is so important. And there's one more point on the debt that I'd like to say, Roger, really quick, is that gold could be a great answer. You see, back in the early 70s, before Nixon took us off the gold standard, the U.S. priced its gold that it holds at $42 an ounce. $42 an ounce, just to put it into context, a little over $2,900 an ounce today. They never marked it to market. So we have over 800 metric tons of gold at $42 an ounce. If we were to take that and mark it to market and price it correctly, that would give the U.S. an additional between $800 and $900 billion, almost $1 trillion, Roger. Now, that's a one-time adjustment that goes into the Treasury's general account, but that's $900 billion less in debt that has to be issued. That would drive interest rates lower very quickly. It's a one-shot deal, but that could really help interest rates come down if we could pull that off.
This is precisely why we are sponsored here by the colonialmetals.group.com. You can go to colonialmetals.group.com/stone. Barry, I know you are a believer in gold and you hold some of it in your portfolio. I have a little tiny bit of it of myself. I think you make an excellent point. Final question. What is your opinion? We got about a minute and a half. What is your opinion of President Trump forming a cryptocurrency reserve for the United States government?
Well, boy, if that's going to happen, the key would be to be long crypto, because that would mean that crypto, as scarce as it is, would become even more scarce, and that would drive the price up. And if other governments would likely follow suit, and what that would do is that would drive the price of things like Bitcoin significantly higher, if that comes to be. We don't know if that'll happen, Roger, but yes. And do I think it's a good idea? Well, look, it's a store of value that's generally accepted. I think it's a good idea. I truly believe in things like Bitcoin, similar to gold. Who said that gold has this, the store of value magic trait? But Bitcoin is also something that is, it's finite. So I think that's a wise choice.
All right. I want to thank Barry Habib, the Chief Executive Owner of MBS Highway, for joining us today. God bless you, Barry, and thanks for dropping in.
God bless you. God bless you, sir.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Summer's heating up, but the savings are cooling off. It's your last chance to shop Blinds.com's Memorial Day mega deals. Blinds.com invented a better way to shop for window treatments, completely online with upfront pricing, no showroom markups, no salespeople in your home. Choose from classic shutters to outdoor shades and more, all backed by our 100% satisfaction guarantee. It's your last chance to shop Blinds.com's Memorial Day mega deals. Save up to 50% with minimum purchase, plus a free measure. Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. Joining me now is Joe Concha, Fox News contributor and author of the book, The Greatest Comeback Ever, Inside Trump's Big, Beautiful Campaign. Joe Concha and I have had the privilege of both appearing on Larry Kudlow's show at 77 WABC and many of the other Red Apple Audio Network stations. I've always found his political analysis to be incisive and on the money, and I'm privileged to have him join the show today. Joe, welcome to the Roger Stone Show.
Roger, the pleasure's all.
So, Joe, Donald Trump has been president for 27 days. Are you tired of winning yet?
It is. I mean, your point, we're under 4%. We're already talking about Russia, Ukraine. We're talking about this investment of 50% in Ukraine as far as raw minerals and paying back what we've given the Ukrainian government during that progression. Not just from Gaza. Impact is something like we've never seen before, and obviously all the executive orders, things like that by biological men, all.
Joe, we're having an audio problem. We're going to have you reconnect with us. So why don't we drop the call and come back in? Joe Concha's upcoming book, Trump's Big Beautiful Campaign, which you can find on Amazon.com, chronicles how Donald Trump swept to a massive victory in 2024. Every conservative wants to know, how did the liberals miss this? In his upcoming book, The Greatest Comeback Ever, Joe Concha revisits the most tone-deaf, unhinged, anti-Trump predictions from the 2024 race. Liberals attacked Trump in every way they could, from lawfare to libel, but each attack seemed only to make him stronger. Why? Well, Joe thinks it's because they had no idea what the American people actually wanted, which was major change from the disastrous 4 years. Joe Concha rejoins us now. Joe, you with us?
Yes, I am. Sorry about the signal. I hope I sound better now, Roger.
Much, much better. So, how did the left get the last election so wrong? Because immediately after Kamala Harris was designated in a completely undemocratic process in which the people who kept lecturing us about the danger to democracy nominated a candidate that not a single Democrat primary voter or caucus voter voted for, they then juiced the polls by oversampling Democrats. They flooded what I think will be proven to be illegal money through Act Blue into her campaign coffers. And they kept telling us that she was breathing down Donald Trump's neck in the 7 swing states, every single one of which Trump won, not just closely, but in most cases handily. How did they get this so wrong?
Roger, we remember that Ann Seltzer poll in Iowa, right? +3 in a state that Donald Trump carried easily double digits back in 2020, carried in 2016 as well. He was up by 18 points on Joe Biden in Iowa in June of 2024. And then suddenly Kamala Harris, this great candidate, is going to sweep it and turn that thing 21 points. It never made any sense. So, look, between that and the fact that Donald Trump was even in national polls, which really means, as you know, he's probably being underweighted by 4 or 5 points. Early voting, I thought that was the smartest thing that Trump did as far as urging his supporters to get out there, play the game, the Democrats, the hand they dealt, as far as get out there and flood the zone as soon as you can. Because if you want to vote for Donald Trump, do it as early as possible. When he was leading in so many swing states like Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, in early voting, that told us that he was going to win this election, win it quite easily. I called it on Fox in October. I said he's going to win this easily. Save the tape if I'm wrong. And sure enough, that's how it turned out. So, look, he was on the right side, Roger, as you know, of every major issue. If we're talking about economy, if we're talking about taxes, if we're talking about draining the swamp, if we're talking about crime, border, foreign wars, everything, if Kamala Harris didn't have an argument, and by the way, she had the ability to make an argument because she was a human Chernobyl when she spoke outside of a teleprompter. So, yeah, it was a pretty easy call to make, but yet so many pundits, I think they were hope casting. They were hoping she would win more than they knew that she would win based on the data.
You can also see that Trump was and is a happier warrior. He was having the time of his life, dancing to YMCA, joking with the press. I mean, this is a man who I think is energized by crowds, energized by people. He is an extrovert in an extrovert's business. And he had a plan for America, whether it was closing the borders or returning us to energy independence, or doing away with the epic inflation that is destroying the country. He had a constructive plan, whereas her closing message to me seemed to be, Trump is Hitler, and if you're voting for him, that means you're a Nazi. Not a very uplifting or inspiring message for a presidential campaign.
And you know it well, Roger. You've been doing it for many decades with many presidents, right? Ronald Reagan, a shining city on the hill. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? George H.W. Bush, 1,000 points of light. Even Bill Clinton, the man from Hope, or Barack Obama, Hope and Change, or Donald Trump, Make America Great Again. You need a positive message, not that guy is a fascist. And the funny thing about the fascist thing is that now we're seeing during Trump 2.0 in his administration, when was the last time, Roger, you saw a fascist government actually try to shrink government, try to give power back to the people, try to weed out waste and corruption? Fascist governments normally don't operate like that. They want more government power. They want less power to the people. Trump is giving it back. So the whole fascist argument is quite funny. And I was at that Madison Square Garden rally in late October, and that was like the most, in terms of a gathering, the happiest people you will see in one place that I've seen since at least my spring break in Cancun back in the 90s. I mean, it was like, and all these Israeli flags and everything. And then I go home and I watch MSNBC and I say, oh, wait a minute. That was a Nazi rally? Boy, that's weird because there were so many Israeli flags there and people were so happy and it was a positive message. But overall, look at the Al Smith dinner, for example, right? As far as positive message, Donald Trump shows up. Kamala Harris sends a video. I mean, when we look back on this, we'll see one of the great campaigns of all time in Trump in terms of going to McDonald's and the garbage truck, and then Kamala Harris avoiding Joe Rogan, avoiding the Al Smith dinner, all those things. It's almost like if you're going to teach a class on how to win and lose elections, we just witnessed it in 2024.
And it is indeed the greatest comeback in history. Look, I worked for Richard Nixon, and his comeback was very great. He lost the 1960 election by a whisker. He lost the California governor's race by a landslide. But then a unique circumstance of the murder of John F. Kennedy, the murder of Robert Kennedy, the murder of Dr. Martin Luther King, and the divisions in the country over the Vietnam War parted the seas for a miraculous political comeback. But he wasn't fighting a tsunami of lawfare, at least not at that point, where they were seeking to keep him off the ballot, seeking to bankrupt him, seeking to lock him up for non-existent crimes. So Trump had to conduct a presidential campaign with that incredible backdrop. And I can tell you, speaking to him, there was not a single time I spoke to him, even in the darkest days of being dragged through New York courtroom, that he was downcast or dejected or depressed or not fully confident that he would win. Folks, we're going to be back with Joe Concha to talk about his great book and his analysis of 27 first days of the Trump administration. So please don't go away. We'll be right back.
This is the Roger Stone Show.
Of course you love a pint of Ben & Jerry's, but maybe you don't love sharing your pint of Ben & Jerry's. No problem. Now you can share the love with Ben & Jerry's new Scoop-A-Palooza. 28 whole ounces of crowd-pleasing flavor in a single tub. It's an instant ice cream party. And if that means your favorite pint is left just for you, so be it. Ben & Jerry's new 28-ounce Scoop-A-Palooza. Made for sharing in 4 larger-than-life flavors. See benjerry.com/palooza.
Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. I'm joined by Joe Concha, Fox News contributor and author of The Greatest Comeback Ever, Inside Trump's Big, Beautiful Campaign. You can order your copy on Amazon.com. Joe, 27 days into the Trump presidency, it's dizzying the pace that he is setting, whether it is outlawing men playing in girls' sports or doing away with the DEI policies that have devastated our military, whether it is cleaning house at the FBI and beginning to do so at the DOJ. I don't know when the man sleeps, to be honest with you. And you can tell he's enjoying every single minute of it. I saw him not this Saturday, I think the Saturday before, and he is just energized. I mean, he's a force of nature. He's a one-man monolith. How do you think it's going so far?
Well, I spoke to somebody close to him not too long ago, and I asked her, I said, well, does he at least drink coffee? Because it doesn't seem like he sleeps. I mean, we saw during the Super Bowl, for example, last week, where he plays 18 holes with Tiger Woods, and when I play 18 holes and I want to take a nap. But no, he's then on Air Force One, and he flies down to the Super Bowl, and he's meeting with first responders and various players. Obviously, gets a huge ovation from the New Orleans crowd. Taylor Swift gets booed, which was quite ironic on 17 levels. And then he comes back after the game, and then he's talking to reporters. It's 11 o'clock at night. Or when a hostage comes home from Russia, there he is, 11 o'clock, greeting him and talking to the press, and he always never looks tired. It's quite remarkable. So when I asked that one close aide to the president, I said, does he drink coffee? She says, no, he does not drink coffee. Obviously, he doesn't drink alcohol. I don't know where it comes from exactly. At 78 years old, it's my birthday today. I'll share that, I guess, and I'm 54 years old today, and I'm about to go on Fox for 2 hours, and I'll probably sleep for about 10 hours afterwards. This guy does not sleep, and I think, Roger, in the end, and you know him better than anybody, he has an appreciation for where he is now. He went through everything he did since 2020 and that election, and then everything afterwards in terms of lawfare, 4 different lawsuits, various civil suits. They tried to assassinate him twice. They took him off ballots in certain states, and the media obviously constantly hostile while propping off whoever the Democrat was as far as Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. All those things, he overcomes all of it. And I think this greatest comeback ever that he's having, he's back in the White House. He appreciates the Lincoln bedroom. He appreciates the Resolute desk, all those things he had. Maybe he didn't appreciate as much his first term. He totally gets it now. And the more important thing, Roger, is that he has surrounded himself with the right people. And it looks like right now that all of his cabinet nominees, some deemed as controversial by the press, whether it be Tulsi Gabbard or RFK Jr. or my friend Pete Hegseth or obviously Kash Patel, they're all going to be confirmed. So he's going to go undefeated in that front. He's going to have the right team around him, unlike the first term where he had people around him that were constantly leaking to the press, constant infighting, couldn't get done what he wanted to get done, no clear path. He has a path now. He has a plan. And boy, as we're seeing on an hourly basis, he is executing on it like we've never seen from any president before.
What you say is so true. First of all, you beat me to the punch. I was going to wish you a happy birthday today. It's amazing how much you've accomplished for a guy who's only 27 years old. It's really, it's really extraordinary.
Thank you. I feel 27.
You have a lot of energy yourself. You're absolutely right. I think in his first term, unfortunately, some around him thought their job was to delay and dilute dilute and derail his program. Now he's got the Justice League around him. I mean, talk about an all-star cabinet, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard, who I have predicted on this show is going to be the first woman president. Not necessarily in 2028, but she's only 43. She has plenty of time. She will be the first a woman president, in my opinion.
I agree.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who impresses me. I mean, we were acquaintances before he ran for president. I think we are friends today. But impresses me when I watch him in interview formats during his own presidential campaign and today, never makes an assertion which he cannot back up with hard data or an authoritative study. And the attempts of Senate Democrats to discredit him, I think, were disgraceful. Yet he came through this process, going to be great in his efforts to make America healthy again. The appointments of Scott Bessent, who's an outside-the-box thinker, a libertarian, somebody who has serious thoughts about not only reducing the national debt, but also addressing the affordable housing crisis in this country. A truly great appointment, in my opinion. Pete Hegseth, who you make reference to, a guy who's actually been on the front lines. I really like that idea. A Secretary of Defense who's actually been on the front lines and fought for his country. This isn't our all-star cast, and they are soon, I think as soon as next Thursday, going to be joined by one of the most important appointees of all, and that would be Kash Patel. Precisely the right guy to head the FBI. Here's Adam Schiff questioning whether Kash Patel has the qualifications to be the head of the FBI.
Well, let me just say, with respect to some of the nominees like Kash Patel, this is someone, in my view, who is not qualified to be FBI director, and someone who claimed, for example, that he wanted to shut down FBI headquarters early in his tenure and open a museum to the deep state. So this is a conspiracy theorist.
I mean, can you imagine Adam Schiff, of all people, the guy who told us that he had seen, quote, more than circumstantial evidence of Russian collusion with the Trump campaign, close quote, and produced none whatsoever, questioning the qualifications of Kash Patel. Unbelievable.
Adam Schiff, you're in a funeral parlor, Roger, no one would die. I'll put it that way, and we got to go because I hear the music saying we got to go. But it was great talking to you, our first interview. I really appreciate it.
Joe Concha, his new book, The Greatest Comeback Ever, Inside Trump's Big, Beautiful Campaign. Order your copy today at Amazon.com. Joe, thank you, and God bless you.
You're the man, Roger. Thank you.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back. This is the Roger Stone Show on the Red Apple Audio Network. And if you follow us at all, you know that we eat, sleep, and breathe politics. I think if you cut me, I'd probably bleed politics. And today I bring you a man who has tackled a very great task. Mark Lynch is a husband, a father, and a grandfather of four, a successful business owner in South Carolina. He is the president and owner of Jeff Lynch Appliance Center, where he employs 110 South Carolinians. In his spare time, Mark is a deacon at his Burnside Baptist Church. He's an addiction counselor, an avid marksman, and he plays a mean guitar with his band, The Concealed Damage. But Mark Lynch has decided that he is going to challenge U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham in this upcoming South Carolina Republican primary. South Carolina has an open primary. That means that anyone of any party, or for that matter, no party at all, can vote in the primary. Lindsey Graham has $16 million in the bank, all of it special interest money. But Mark Lynch, a patriot, a Christian, an optimist, finds a lot to be desired in Lindsey Graham's record. In that, I agree with him, and I'm very pleased and privileged to have Mark Lynch join us now.
Thank you so much, Roger. So it's an honor to be on your show today.
Lindsey Graham, I tell this story that not that long ago, several months ago, I was at a reception at Mar-a-Lago. There was several hundred people there. Lindsey Graham was there. And he had his back to the swimming pool. He was only about 2 feet away from the edge of the pool. And I was with my wife, and suddenly a broad grin came across my face, and she looked at me and said, "Don't you dare. Don't you even think about it." And for an episecond, I thought what it would be like to push that rhino into the pool. And my wife said, the Secret Service will grab you and they will throw you out of here and they will bar you from ever coming back again. So don't even think about it. I didn't do it, but I have dreamed about doing it several times, I must admit. I wish I understood Lindsey Graham. When I see his relationship with the president, I think of that adage from The Godfather that, well, keep your friends close and your enemies closer, but there's really nothing Lindsey Graham loves more than war. He has actually advocated in January of 2025 that President Trump launch a nuclear attack on Iran. He expressed skepticism about the effectiveness of diplomacy, saying there's a 1 in a trillion chance you'll degrade the Iranian nuclear program through diplomacy. This guy is war crazy. Trigger happy. I frankly think he's dangerous. What say you?
Well, that's one of his definitions. We hear all the time that he is a warmonger, and I hope that doesn't happen. Our Congress is supposed to decide on that and vote on it. I guess Lindsey could bring it up and make a suggestion, but we don't want to be killing our sons and daughters in a war that we don't need to be in. It needs to be the last resort. And the other thing that we all know is we follow these money trails, and he's probably wants to get another war going so he can get some more payments coming in with special interest war people that love that. So that industrial war complex that he's involved in. So, no, we don't need that.
Yeah, if you examine his donors, you'll find a disproportionate numbers of the donations from the political action committees controlled by defense contractors. War is, let's face it, big business. I remember specifically on reports that on January 6th, after the events at the Capitol, which I believe were part of a Fedsurrection, where we still don't have all the answers about what went down that day. I was not there, but Lindsey Graham was calling the White House counsel, threatening to have President Trump removed under the 25th Amendment. The 25th Amendment, which, by the way, the U.S. Senate has no role in whatsoever. The 25th Amendment can remove a president from office if a majority of the cabinet and the sitting vice president agree that the president is incapacitated and cannot fulfill his or her duties, and the president has the right to challenge that conclusion by taking it to both houses of Congress. But without knowing any of the facts, Lindsey Graham was advocating the removal of President Trump from office. It is, however, as I stated, an uphill battle because of South Carolina's tradition of an open primary. Now, this is a long tradition, and in the past, it actually served conservatives well. In 1964, Strom Thurmond, who was elected Democrat governor, then elected to the U.S. Senate against the Democrat machine, decided with the nomination of Barry Goldwater as a Republican, and knowing Lyndon Johnson well, that he could no longer remain in the Democrat Party. He announced in a televised address to the people of South Carolina that he was switching parties to become a Republican and that he would endorse Goldwater. Now, he was in the middle of his term, and there was no legal requirement that he resign, but he felt that it was less than honest to the people of South Carolina for him to fulfill the balance of his term as a Democrat. So he resigned the seat and then ran in a special election, and he first had to get through a Republican primary in which tens of thousands of conservative Democrats invaded the Republican primary, quite legally, to nominate Strom Thurmond, who went on to a sweeping victory. And since that time, the open primary has been a mainstay in South Carolina politics. I don't know what the prospects are for the legislature to change state law. And if the state law was to be changed, it would still require the signature of your governor, Henry McMaster, who I'd say right up front is a friend of mine, was a U.S. attorney in the Reagan days, has been a very, very good governor, strongly supported President Trump over former Governor Nikki Haley in her home state. But what do you think the prospects are for the primary to be limited to Republicans only?
There's a bill right now that was brought up last week to the House and the Senate to try to close primaries in our state. It hadn't really gotten anywhere yet. It's just in the beginnings of them looking at it. But people like Lindsey all through the years are for open primaries because that's the only way they can get elected. When the Democrats cross over and pour in to vote for him on that day, then they vote democratically in the general election in November. But so I hope this gets somewhere. We've all been pushing hard to get an election integrity bill together. We've got several that many House members and some of our political activist groups have gotten with attorneys and written, and a lot of them just end up sitting there because they need the open primary to keep winning. I asked you were talking earlier, Roger, about him bringing up the 25th Amendment to get rid of Trump. Why didn't he do that with Biden? He definitely wasn't able to serve as the president, with dementia and Alzheimer's and everything else he had going on. And I don't know why he would want to attack Iran right now when we sent them $8 billion of our taxpayers' money about a year ago. We're paying our enemies with our taxpayers' money all the time. And so I just don't see that Lindsey Graham is honoring the oath that he swore to defend against foreign or domestic. He's helping our enemies all the time and getting paid well to do it. But he probably wants to get rid of Trump right now because Trump's uncovering everything all these guys are involved in, especially the USAID information that's coming out, where it's been stated all over the internet that Lindsey has received $130 million out of that. So I'm sure he would love to get rid of Trump right now. But the rest of the country loves what Trump's doing.
I would imagine that is also very true in South Carolina. To illustrate your point, if you examine the votes that Nikki Haley got in the South Carolina primary, remember, she'd been governor of the state against Donald Trump. 2 out of every 3 votes she got came from non-Republicans, Democrats, and left-leaning independents. When we come back, I'm going to ask Mark Lynch about how he intends to finance this grassroots campaign. It is uphill anytime you challenge an incumbent member of Congress anywhere in the country. Doing so is an enormous act of courage. We'll be back with Mark Lynch. Please don't go away.
This is The Roger Stone Show. Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone, who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now, he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone.
Roger Stone.
This is the Roger Stone Show, presented by Colonial Metals Group. Now, here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back. This is the Roger Stone Show here on the Red Apple Audio Network, and we're talking to Mark Lynch. This past Monday, Mark Lynch announced that he would do what no career politician would do. He is challenging U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who is seeking his 5th term in the U.S. Senate. Lindsey Graham was watched very carefully during these confirmation hearings to see whether he had the audacity to oppose the president's nominees. In the end, although we still have some nominees to go, he has in the end supported all of the president's nominees. I think it would have been extraordinarily dangerous for him not to do so. I've looked at President Trump's approval record numbers in the polls in South Carolina. They are, as you expect, off the charts. I was very interested during the campaign when Lindsey Graham addressed a rally, I think it was in Greenville, where President Trump spoke, the way the crowd of Trump supporters lustily booed their senior senator. Thought that was a very telling moment. Seemed to surprise the president. But Senator Graham, according to what I'm reading, has actually $15.6 million in his campaign coffers, including $900,000 that he raised just in the last quarter of the year. Mark, this is an uphill battle. How do you intend to finance your insurgent campaign?
Well, first of all, Roger, I'm going to inject $5 million of my own money into the bank account when we start it in a couple of weeks, and get that in for people to see. We're serious out here, and I think God is all in this. I know the people of the country. It wasn't really a party. The people of the United States voted and got President Trump in office overwhelmingly, and we're seeing that same kind of energy out here in this race. When I last ran for state senate, my election was stolen. People have asked me for 4 years, would I run again, because they know that I'm serious. I will do the same thing in that position as I've done in my life and my marriage as a business owner all these years. And it's about making good, godly decisions. And I'll do that in this position. And the Lord tells us in Psalms 145:20 that he watches over all who love him, but the wicked he will destroy. When Trump got in, a couple of weeks after he got in, he wrote an executive order to end the mutilation of our children for transgender surgeries. And Judge Herson came up and is overturning that. And Lindsey is one of 3 Republicans that voted to overturn Trump's executive order. He's for mutilating our children across the country into a transgender surgery. I don't think God likes that kind of a thing. And God promises all of us who love him that if we are for him, who can be against us? And nobody can touch us. The enemy can't touch us. God will fund this election. And I don't think we need 16 or 20 million to beat Lindsey. I think Lindsey is choking himself in his own vomit. That's what God does to his enemies. And this latest thing he did with this sexual transgender surgery bill that he doesn't want, overturning what Trump wanted, proves he's wicked evil. And so God will fund it. God supplies everything we need when we seek him first and his kingdom of righteousness. He'll bring the money, and the people will bring it to us. we're hearing that all day, every day, with everybody signing up to help this campaign to do everything they can to get Lindsey out. So it's going to happen.
I note that you have posted a website, lynchforsenate.com, lynchforsenate.com, for those who want more information or want to make a contribution. By the way, Senator Graham, we don't endorse candidates here on the show, so he is welcome to come on the show anytime if he wants to dispute anything we say here today. But look, I like people who get in the arena. I like people who get into the fight, not the person who stands on the sideline and criticizes the men and women who do get into the fight, looking as to how they might have done it better, but those who actually get into the fight. I find your faith inspiring. I myself, redeemed in the blood of the cross some time ago, completely changed my life. I went from being a hard-boiled political operative who would wandered far from the Lord to being a hard-boiled political operative who believes, changed my life completely. And I do know that with Jesus Christ, all things are possible, even come from behind an unprecedented political victory. Donald Trump was not supposed to win in 2016. In fact, they told us it was impossible. The New York Times gave Hillary Clinton a 93% chance of winning. Yet the Lord and Donald Trump, through his hard work, had different ideas. And so it has been. I never discourage good men and women who want to dive into the arena and fight for the things they believe in. And in this case, I think people would be making an enormous mistake to discount your candidacy. I think that, yes, the open primary is going to bring a lot of liberal Democrats and left-leaning independents, but it's also going to bring a bunch of conservative Democrats, and they still have them in your state, and conservative-leaning independents into this primary. This is going to be an epic battle. Now, you're right about one thing, and that is you don't have to spend as much as the incumbent to beat the incumbent. It doesn't work that way. What you need is to have sufficient funds. So you're already on your way. You put your own money where your mouth is by agreeing to donate $5 million of your own hard-earned money to your campaign. And people, as I say, can go to lynchforsenate.com to add to that war chest. I predict that you're going to raise millions of dollars from across the country, not just from South Carolina, and that this is going to be one of the most exciting, hard-fought races in the country. It is not easy. It's all-consuming. A campaign for the Senate or for any office is all-consuming. You will find that other than going to church, all your other social activities have to be put aside. You will spend yourself in this fight, but it is a fight for a good cause. So, Mark Lynch, God bless you. Thanks for joining us today, and good luck on the campaign trail.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Roger.
Yankee Doodle do or die. A real live nephew of my Uncle Sam.
Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome. I'm Roger Stone, and this is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. The most powerful, influential, and entertaining AM radio station in America today. Just last night, a station owner and the host of the Katz and Cosby Show here on 77 WABC, was seen huddling with President Donald Trump for half an hour at his palatial Mar-a-Lago estate. And we bring you the very latest on the Trump administration, many times supplying the inside story of what's going on in Donald Trump's effort to make America great again. My guest now is one of the most interesting guests I've had the opportunity to interview, Sam Antar. His own story he calls From White-Collar Criminal to Fraud Investigator Extraordinaire. Sam Antar is a former certified public accountant whose career trajectory took a remarkable turn from perpetrator to investigator of financial fraud. As the former chief financial officer of Crazy Eddie, a major consumer electronics chain in the northeastern United States during the 1980s, Antar was a key figure in one of the decade's largest security fraud schemes. Following his criminal conviction, and after he paid his debt to society, Antar redirected his expertise towards forensic accounting, leveraging his firsthand knowledge of financial fraud to help combat white-collar crime. His unique perspective and technical expertise have made him an expert advisor to various clients, including government agencies, law enforcement organizations, law firms and accounting firms, independent investment research firms, hedge funds, and public companies. He has an extraordinarily influential blog called whitecollarfraud.com, and Sam Antar has established himself as a prominent voice in exposing financial misconduct. Sam's investigative work spans multiple areas, includes government corruption, campaign finance irregularities, misappropriation of taxpayer funds, political manipulation of statistics, securities fraud, and accounting discrepancies by public companies. Sam's analyses have proven valuable to regulatory agencies, including the Securities and Exchange Commission, that's the SEC, and his expert testimony and work has been used in class action lawsuits against companies with questionable accounting practices. The Journal of Accountancy endorsed his work in December of 2008, and the Huffington Post named Sam as among the 25 most influential figures in financial media back in June of 2012. Sam Antar joins us today on The Roger Stone Show.
Thank you for having me on, Roger. It's a pleasure.
Sam, you have made some very newsworthy claims. You have been investigating both the campaign finance reports and the personal financial disclosures that are required by law of Attorney General Letitia James. And these have garnered very substantial media coverage in recent days. Let's take the second one first, if we may. You say in a series of very compelling tweets on X, and also in an excellent article on your website, whitecollarfraud.com, that you believe that New York's top law enforcement officer, Attorney General Letitia James, has inflated the value of her assets in order to qualify for mortgages for commercial properties. And of course, that, if true, is the exact crime in which she falsely accused Donald Trump of. Lay it on us, Sam.
Okay, let me break it down. Letitia James is required to file certain personal financial statements with the New York State Board of Ethics lobbying elections. These are her representations. I am, as a forensic accountant, I look at her representations and I compare them with her representations elsewhere and also independent sources. Now, on the issue of the properties, she has a property in Norfolk, Virginia, that she bought for approximately $137,000 in August of 2020. She has consistently valued that property on her filings as between $100,000 to $150,000. They allow a range. So August 2020, she buys the property. Every single subsequent financial disclosure has it listed as $100,000 to $150,000. Easy. The problem comes when initially when I looked at her campaign filings and I saw, wow, she says it's worth $100,000 to $150,000, but she claims the property is encumbered by two mortgages totaling between $250,000 to $400,000, basically 2.5 times the value of the property. Now, what kind of bank does that? So that was the first red flag. The second red flag was, I said, there's something else there. So I ordered a title report on the property. If you're allowed to, get title reports. They do a search. They see who the chain of ownership are, loans paid off. And guess what I find? When she bought the property initially for, as I said, about $137,000, she took about $109,000 mortgage, primary mortgage on the property. That mortgage is not listed in the New York financial disclosures. And guess what? The mortgages listed in the New York financial disclosures are nowhere to be found on the title report. So what you're seeing here is disclosures in our campaign filings that don't match the title report, stuff on the title report that don't match the campaign filings, and the sum and substance of it all is there has to be a gross level of misconduct on her part because nothing matches. Now, the worst part of it, of course, is that she has mortgages. If you believe her filings, this is her work. This is what she's saying. 2.5 times the value of a property, not including a mortgage that doesn't seem to make its way to the $109,000 mortgage that doesn't seem to make its way into a campaign filing. So she may have 3.5 times the value of the property in mortgages. We don't know. But what lender gives you money more than the value of a property? And not only that, what lender allows you not to record the mortgage? I've never seen this in my entire life.
Well, she also, if I read your story correctly, in one place she calls this a second home mortgage, but elsewhere she says it is a rental property. Seems to be yet another inconsistency. That
is correct. It was taken out as a second mortgage, right? I mean, there's a mortgage on a second home, And immediately she started renting out the property. Another inconsistency. And the first year that she owned the property, she had $1,000 to $5,000 in revenue. And after that, she had no revenue whatsoever. I don't know if the property's been empty. I don't know if she's given it to relatives to use. I don't know if she's made any visits there or any stays there. But that's pretty much where the property is now. So you have a property that's not earning any money, right? That she's paying probably around $40,000 in mortgage payments, right? Another $2,000 or $3,000 in real estate taxes, and she's listing it as an investment property, whereas the mortgage says it's supposed to be a second home.
Very, very interesting. You also, as I recall, looked into her campaign finance reports, found a number of interesting things there as well.
Yes, that is correct. She loves to spend money on luxury. In the most recent campaign finance report, which was filed on January 15th, 2025. I might be off the date. But anyway, she shows 3 expenses in Martha's Vineyard. One at the Strand Theater for $1,750 for a meeting. I've never been to the Strand Theater. But the 2 more interesting items are this. She has 2 charges totaling $5,200 listed as transportation at Bluefin Taxi in September of 2024. That's $5,191.68. Okay? You can traverse Martha's Vineyard in 45 minutes. To do this kind of expense, you have to circle Martha's Vineyard. Let's see. You have to go through around Martha's Vineyard 10 times a day to get to this number. It's ridiculous. How do you spend $5,000 on cab fare in Martha's Vineyard? The mile it's only 87 square miles.
It's interesting. The researcher Chris Gleason has conducted an ongoing investigation into those campaign contributions that flowed to Letitia James' campaign for Attorney General, funneled through the payment processing company ActBlue. Now, coincidentally, ActBlue turns off the function in which the credit card of the person allegedly making the donation has to match their credit card to a mailing address, the mailing address where the bill for the card is sent. And he has found a disproportionate, a majority of the contributions coming from individuals who then certify when contacted that not only did they not make one contribution, but in many cases they made no contributions, and they are largely unfamiliar with Letitia James. This is called smurfing. It is widespread. It is a widespread practice. Sometimes you find donors who are on disability or just living on Social Security, but have made hundreds of thousands of donations. That final report, I think, is at about the 50% mark. As you might imagine, in this atmosphere, there are people who are not going to open their door to a stranger, but many, many do, and a disproportionate number of them saying that these are not contributions they made. Yet another area of inquiry that we're going to be keeping our listeners up to date on. The other question that I ask that I think needs to be examined is during her 3 terms on the New York City Council, where she submitted contributions to the New York City's 8-to-1 campaign finance matching fund program, which must be from New York City residents. Every one of those donors will be contacted to confirm that the contribution really came from them or that the money was not supplied to them. That was, as you know, the one of the accusations in the indictment of Mayor Eric Adams, contained in the indictment that was recently dismissed by the U.S. Justice Department. And then lastly, I'm very curious about the result of a lawsuit filed against Attorney General James' former chief of staff, a man named Abraham Khan, for sexual assault. I see that Attorney General James sought to quash that, sought to have it dismissed, but that motion failed in the appellate court. Yet trying to follow the public record, I'm trying to determine the final outcome of this case that was filed back in 2022. I'm going to continue to research that matter, as are others. Folks, we're talking to Sam Antar, who is an expert at the question of analyzing these kind of sophisticated financial reports, both campaign finance reports and the personal disclosure reports. And we'll be right back. Don't touch that dial.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
A man who's gone through hell, but he's kept going, and he's smart, and he's strong, and people love him. Not everybody, but people love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. We're talking to Sam Antar, one of the most interesting guests I've had on the Roger Stone Show. An extraordinary backstory. A man who was involved in one of the decade's largest security fraud schemes, something he readily admits, but who's turned his life to now exposing public and private corruption. A true expert when it comes to analyzing the numbers. And I urge you folks to go to his excellent blog, whitecollarfraud.com. He has a terrific article published on February 13th, which outlines in much greater detail than we can do here in a brief segment the discrepancies and many questions regarding the sworn financial disclosures versus the official property records of Attorney General Letitia James. So I'm going to ask you, Sam, to recap this for us, because it seems to me this situation reveals multiple layers of concerning discrepancies. There's a single documented mortgage. This comes from OVM Financial, which James never even bothered to disclose in her New York State financial statements. Moreover, she claims to have 2 additional investment properties totaling up to $400,000. However, these alleged mortgages cannot be found in any official property records, title histories, or UCC filings. Sam, what's going on here?
Well, my guess is deceit. My guess is, I can't put myself in her mind, but I can say when it doesn't add up, it doesn't add up, which she has done basically, like you said. She bought a property. She mortgaged it 2.5 times its value. Some of the mortgages are listed on her campaign filings but cannot be found on the title reports. And some of the mortgages on the title reports cannot be found on the campaign filings. She has a history of lavishly spending money as far as using her campaign money for lavish things like Martha's Vineyard, $5,100 for cab rides in Martha's Vineyard. I mean, I lived in New York City the entire year in Manhattan. I wouldn't spend $5,000 in cab rides. That has to be looked into. But on a totality thing, I would suggest this, okay? Roger, you and I are old enough to remember Tip O'Neill, all politics is local. That was his famous saying.
Yes.
Doge is too centralized. A community advocate, Letitia James, once told me there has to be a Doge on local levels. There has to be local level task force looking into this issue. It's great to have it out of Washington. It's great to be centralized. I get all that. But at the same token, that's why we have 50 or 60 different U.S. attorneys' offices to cover various areas. There has to be a mini Doge within every U.S. attorney's office in this country specializing in local political corruption and fraud.
Sam, it seems to me Elon Musk should reach out to you and have you join the Doge team. I think you would fit in when it comes to ferreting out waste, fraud, and corruption. You've raised very serious questions here, such as why did Attorney General James attest to the lender that the Virginia property in question would be a second home and then consistently report it as an investment property on her state disclosures? Then what happened to the original $109,600 OVM financial second home mortgage from 2020? Why was that mortgage never disclosed? Then
you have other problems also, by the way. I'm sorry to have interrupted you.
Go ahead.
You have the house in Brooklyn where she says it jumped in value $1 million in 1 year between 2021 and 2022, but the property taxes show that the value is going lower.
That
has to be explained too. There's a lot of discrepancies that don't add up. And when they don't add up, that's a red flag. And when you have multiple red flags, that means something is wrong.
Well, and again, in all fairness, the Attorney General is welcome to come on this show with Sam Antar and talk about these questions. There's an open invitation for her to come and answer these questions. Perhaps there's a legitimate answer. We'd certainly give her that opportunity if she wants to avail herself of it. But I don't understand how someone gets a $400,000 worth of mortgages on a property that's not valued at more than $150,000. This seems to be precisely what she falsely accused Donald Trump of doing. By the way, using a law that had never been used before to prosecute him unfairly. It really does boggle the mind that she seems to be guilty of that exact thing which she falsely accused the president of. And then the other question is an obvious one. If you look at these campaign finance reports, where it's very clear that she has made expenditures, luxury expenditures that inure to her benefit, are there not federal income tax implications for that?
Yes, there are. Yes, there are. If you use campaign financing for personal use, that is an income tax. That is an event for income taxes. That is an income tax related transaction. In other words, you have to disclose it as income. You can't use your campaign money to buy yourself a vacation. If you do that, that vacation is taxable income.
Amazing. All right, Sam Antar, who is I admire as a relentless seeker of the truth and a man who documents everything he says. Again, his great website, White Collar Fraud. I suspect we're going to have you back. Chris Gleason's already talked to me about coming on to talk about what he has discovered in Tish James' campaign finance reports in her fundraising for the office of Attorney General. The Attorney General is welcome to come on the show with either of these gentlemen to tell the other side of the story if she so desires. But I do think there's going to be public focus not only on these financial questions, but very interested in the case of a woman, a Miss Quintanar. This complaint of sexual assault was filed against Letitia James' chief of staff. She sought to have it dismissed. It was not dismissed. But what the current status of this case is not clear from the public filings. And if it was settled with a non-disclosure, well, it would have been settled with public funds, so a non-disclosure would not be allowed. Very interested in looking into this case as well as other known accusations. This was covered in the New York Post, by the way. The Attorney General put out a statement regarding it. So it is not. This is not something that we're pulling out of no place. The law firm that filed this, the Wigador firm, put out a statement at the time it was filed. A lot here to unpack. We'll be covering these issues in the days ahead. I want to thank Sam Antar for joining us today. And Sam, we'll definitely be having you back to talk about your upcoming revelations regarding the Attorney General's public filings and records. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me on. You're a piece of American history, a man that I admire. God bless you.
Many thanks. Joining us shortly will be former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich. He was the recipient of a presidential pardon earlier last week. The president commuted his sentence several years ago, but now he is fully pardoned. He is patient zero when it comes to the question of weaponization of the criminal justice system. Again, he was accused of selling a seat in the U.S. Senate when he was governor of Illinois. In fact, he merely refused an order by incoming President Barack Obama to appoint Valerie Jarrett to the seat that he was vacating. And the government claimed in that case to have an audio recording of an illegally obtained wiretap on the governor, yet they refused to play the tape in court. He was acquitted in his first trial. The government retried him. They still refused to play the tape. I thought in the United States of America you were entitled to confront your accusers and hear all evidence against you. I guess that's true unless you're Rod Blagojevich and you are a target. I also want to remind you that you have two choices here. If you live in the greater New York, New Jersey, Connecticut area where I grew up, even eastern Pennsylvania, you can listen to us at 770 on the AM dial. But any place in the country, you can listen to our show at WABCRadio.com. That's WABCRadio.com. We are live streaming in 163 countries worldwide. Let me urge you to go to your phone right now and download the 77 WABC Radio app. That way, if you have to miss the show, you can go back and listen to it any time. You don't want to miss any of the great programming we have here at 77 WABC Radio, because it is, as I said, the most powerful, the most influential, and the most entertaining AM radio station in America today. We are indeed the crown jewel of AM radio. You don't want to miss any of our great programming. Download it to your phone now. I'm Roger Stone. We'll be back with Governor Rod Blagojevich, so don't go away.
It's the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. Richard Nixon.
Well, I'm not a crook.
Ronald Reagan.
Tear down this wall.
George W. Bush.
I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you.
And Donald Trump.
And a friend of mine for a long time, he only likes politics. If you ask him about how are the Yankees doing, he has no interest. If you ask him almost anything, he likes politics, and he's a professional at the highest level. Roger Stone.
All of these presidents relied on one man to secure their seat in the Oval Office. That man is Roger Stone. This is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
Welcome back. This is Roger Stone, and this is the Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC, the crown jewel of AM radio. I am joined now by former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich, who has lived an interesting life, to say the least. He was the governor of Illinois, the first Democrat elected to that office in 26 years. He was also the first Illinois governor to be impeached. Later, he became known as federal prisoner number 40892-424 after being unjustly convicted of public corruption charges having to do with the U.S. Senate seat being vacated by Barack Obama when he became president. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. Rod Blagojevich is an American success story. Born to a blue-collar family in Chicago, Rod shined shoes, delivered pizzas, worked in a meat packing plant when he was growing up. He worked for 2 summers for an Alaskan pipeline. Thanks to the sacrifice of his parents and his continued hard work, he attended and graduated Northwestern University, went on to get a law degree from Pepperdine University. He was an assistant state's attorney for Cook County, Illinois. He served in the State House as a state representative, and in 1996 he was elected to the U.S. Congress. He beat long odds to become the 40th governor of the state of Illinois. He was, as he pointed out to me the other day, not the favorite, waged a stunning comeback behind victory to win that race, and he had a historic term as a moderate Democrat without ever raising taxes on the on the working families of Illinois. He created historic access to affordable health care for all of the children of his state. He provided free mammograms and pap smear tests for tens of thousands of women who did not have health insurance. He established free public transportation for every senior citizen and disabled person in the state. And he relentlessly blocked his own party's attempts to raise taxes on the working families of Illinois. His political career came crashing down when he was falsely accused of selling the U.S. Senate seat that Barack Obama was vacating to become president of the United States. He went to trial twice, was not convicted the first time, was convicted in a secondary trial after impeachment, and was sentenced to 14 years in prison, of which he served an 8-year term before having that sentence commuted by President Donald Trump on February 18th of 2020. This past Monday, I believe it was, Rod Blagojevich received a full and unconditional presidential pardon. He is, as I said earlier, patient zero, victim zero in the weaponization of our criminal justice system, and beyond his extraordinary talents as a political communicator and an extraordinary record as a servant of the people, as governor of Illinois. What I admire so much about Rod Blagojevich is, after that experience, he is not bitter, he is not angry, he is not damaged. He remains an optimist about our country. People ask him if he's a Republican or a Democrat. He says he's a Trumplicrat. I love that. I'm honored to have my good friend Rod Blagojevich join us now on the Roger Stone Show.
Hi, Roger. Thanks for having me.
It is a delight. It was a delight to be with you just a few days ago, and you still have that ability to inspire. I think I like telling the story of your trial even more than you do, because it's very clear to me that Rod Blagojevich did nothing wrong. You were accused and caught red-handed in engaging in politics. Tell us about it.
Well, right. Thank you, Roger. And your introduction was really maybe the nicest introduction I've had in about 25 years. But no, I'm so grateful to President Trump for not only pulling me out of prison, which was a significant thing. It was the best gift my young daughters ever received in their life. Donald Trump gave them their father back, and he did it for a Democrat governor, and it did nothing to help his politics. It's just an example of President Trump as a person who sees things that are wrong and then he rights them, and also an indication of how kind-hearted he is, and you know that better than I do, Roger, because you've known him for so long. But it was calamity came on. Our calamity came on like a whirlwind when I was in the middle of my second term as governor, fighting the system in our state capital, the establishment. And, I learned a lot of hard lessons from that experience. And then when I was stuck in prison, I saw what they were doing to President Trump and what they did to me at the statewide level, to a Democratic governor. I like to say at the AAA level. They then were emboldened and began to do and have been doing to President Trump at the major league level to a Republican president. It's the biggest, single most, I think, greatest crisis that we've had in America, constitutional crisis, since the Civil War, the weaponization of prosecutions for political reasons, lawfare, the corruption of the criminal justice system for political purposes. And it's just among the many reasons why I'm so grateful as an American, grateful to my country for giving me the opportunity to live the American dream that you just talked about. So grateful and hopeful and optimistic because President Trump is president now. And this is a president who's not like most politicians. This is a president who is a problem solver, who is strong and tough and courageous and brave and dares to do things. And I believe the opportunity now to reform this corrupt system in the DOJ and the courts, I think, is right before us. And I believe President Trump's team is actively already involved in trying to reform a broken system, a weaponized system, a system that's stealing from the people their right to choose their leaders in elections that are free and fair. And let me just say this, just like you, Roger, I didn't do it. I didn't break a single law, and I wouldn't give in just like you. And when you don't give in, you fight back. And they're able to use unlawful standards to get convictions for things that are legal, routine, ordinary, and necessary, and that happen every day in government. When they can do that, like they did to me, and they know they're corrupt, they then send you to prison for 14 years because they want to bury you, and with it, the truth.
Well, Rod, in your case, and I've said this before, I see why they had to send you away because given your skills, your communicative skills, and your incredible record as governor, you would have been president. Yet you were the first governor in the country to endorse Barack Obama, and he repaid that political support with treachery. I never thought the case against you was was legitimate or sound. I think you were railroaded for clearly political reasons, yet you bore that hardship. You've talked about the fact that the only thing they let you bring into the prison with you was a Bible. And, I'm, like you, very busy in American politics. I'd spent some time with the Bible, but I never really had the chance to study it. I never had a chance to get through some of the more ponderous parts, the beginning and the creation, to some of the most important lessons. But I saw you talk to students last Friday very movingly about how your faith and how the Bible sustained you in that very dark place. Tell us about that.
Yes, Roger, thank you. I'm writing a book about my experience. This is a story that starts with one president, Obama, ends with another, Trump, and most of it's about a governor in prison with Crips and Bloods and gangster disciples and Sinaloa cartel drug dealers, even murderers. They put me in a higher security prison behind the razor wire for nearly 3 years. No governor's been there. They were squeezing me. And I was alone, and I was heartsick and missing my children, missing my wife, fearful for them because they were alone. I wasn't there to protect them or provide for them. And, it was a dark place in a real prison, like the kind you see in movies. And I reached for the Bible that my wife, Patty, gave me, the only thing they allowed me to bring into prison. And I no longer sought to read the Bible cover to cover. I would always get stuck in Genesis, just like you just said. But I went to something that immediately can help me. And because I was so desperate, I went to Psalms. I went to the 23rd Psalm first. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And then I kept reading Psalms, and then I moved on to Proverbs, and then to Isaiah, and then Jeremiah, and then Micah, and then the Gospels, of course, and the letters of St. Paul, who wrote a lot of those from prison himself, and, of course, most of all, the greatest of them all, Jesus. And there he was in the Garden of Gethsemane on that fateful night, so afraid because he knew what was coming. He knew what he had to suffer, what he would have to endure. He's sweating, literally sweating blood. And he prays to his Father, Father, please lift this cup from me. And then he realizes, no, not what I want, but what you want. Your will be done. And then he heroically and suffered all the things you could possibly suffer. And, when I think about stories like that, and I would read the Bible over and over and over again, and I did it every day, Roger, because it was a companion. I was no longer alone. I could actually feel being closer to God by reading that Bible. And I did it every day for the 2,896 days that I was in prison. And that, the faith I had in God, and the feeling that no matter how bad this was going to be, he was going to pull me through it, and that there would be a miracle somewhere, which eventually there was. And here's Donald Trump, who's the Republican president years later, after I've exhausted all my legal remedies and I can't get justice in the courts, and my old friend Obama passes me by. Incidentally, they wanted me to talk about him, those prosecutors, and I wouldn't do it because what we were discussing was political horse trading. But Obama sold me out to make a deal to protect himself. And then Donald Trump is the one who pulls me out. All the hand of God. There's no doubt in my mind it was a miracle. And so all I can tell you is that it was faith, hope, and love for my daughters and my wife that gave me the strength and the determination to endure, persevere, overcome, and one day make it back home on the miracle where President Trump became God's instrument and did what he did way back there in 2020 when he brought me home. And now again with this pardon. It is remarkable, Roger, and it's a miracle that I would do Donald Trump's television show, Celebrity Apprentice, a show that, I was busy being governor. I never watched it. I mean, it was a highly successful show, #1 rated show, but that he would actually give me a chance to be on his show when no one would do anything with me back then because I was a leper and I had a chance to, earn some money for my family. But better than that, he was so kind to me on that show. And then years later, he pulls me out of prison, which hurt him politically, didn't help him. And then now just the other day, last week, he pardons me. So, my relationship with Donald Trump, Roger, has been really him doing only great things for me. I don't feel like I've been worthy in the stuff that I've been trying to do to help him. But I think he's just great. I think he's going to be a great president. I truly think he's going to be one of the greatest presidents in American history because he's going to save our democracy and he's going to make America great. I truly believe that.
When we come back, I want to talk to Rod Burgoyne about whether that tape that we talked about earlier and whether Barack Obama's 302 interview with the FBI, which was never supplied to Rod Blagojevich's trial, will now finally be exposed and released by Attorney General Pam Bondi. We'll be right back with more of Rod Blagojevich here on The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC, so don't touch that dial.
It's The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC. It's The Roger Stone Show on 77 WABC.
And we're back, folks. We're talking to Rod Blagojevich, the former governor of Illinois, who got the very good news that he received a full and unconditional pardon. Let's address that question real quickly. During your trial and during your second trial and your appeals, the government steadfastly refused to play the audio tapes of wiretaps that I think were obtained illegally against you, as well as refusing to turn over President Barack Obama's 302 interview with the FBI. Are you hopeful now that Pam Bondi, the new Attorney General, will release these documents, which would further clear your name?
I think she's a great Attorney General already. It's only been a few weeks. I think she's going to be a great Attorney General. I think Kash Patel is going to be a great FBI Director. They have made it clear that they intend to reform the Department of Justice and take the politics out of it. And if they can do that, and I believe they will, they're going to literally save our democracy. The threat to democracy was never Donald Trump. The threat to democracy has always been these weaponized prosecutors who today's Democratic Party have adopted as sort of a political allies and political instruments for their Democratic agenda. And no party should do that to anybody. Republicans shouldn't do it to Democrats. Democrats shouldn't do it to Republicans, because what they're doing is they're stealing from the people their right to choose their leaders in elections that are free and fair. They're actually undermining our freedom. And this is the kind of politics of KGB Soviet-style police state politics that has no place in America. So Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are the right people. They've already discussed efforts to do this. I think they're going to do great. I think my case can be helpful in this effort. The way they cheat and lie and cover things up. 98% of the FBI tapes that they made, Roger, are covered up to this day. It have been covered up since the very beginning. They took snippets of conversations, 2% of them, out of context, used them publicly, which was illegal, and then used them in court against me and wouldn't allow me to have the tapes and the rest of those conversations to fill out the context. So they took things out of context. Now, even that, they didn't prove up any crimes. But the fact that those tapes are covered up, the potential, I think, to lift that gag order, I think, would be very helpful and show just how this guy, Patrick Fitzgerald, lied on the day he had me arrested, saying he was, quote-unquote, stopping a crime spree before it happened, when the day before and the days and weeks before, it was clear that I was about to make a political deal for health care for more people, a public works program that would create tens of thousands of jobs, and a written promise that the Democrats, my party, wouldn't override my veto on an income tax increase. That's what happened, and they arrested me the morning after. Rahm Emanuel was going to be the go-between to make it happen. So if they play those tapes, that stuff will be revealed, and they will be exposed as being liars and being corrupt. Will Pam Bondi or Kash Patel or the new DOJ do something like that? I don't know. Maybe the Republicans in the Congress together with the Department of Justice might. I think it would be helpful to show and expose just how corrupt and dirty they have become. And, I have to still believe, Roger, that most men and women in the Department of Justice are well-intentioned. But, when you're in prison for 8 years, one positive is you can catch up on your reading. And believe it or not, I actually read some Shakespeare. And Shakespeare, Henry VI, there's the famous line that says, the first thing we do is let's kill all the lawyers. That line is misused and taken out of context as a line to attack lawyers. But what Shakespeare meant in that play was that if you want to destroy the freedoms of the people, the first thing you do is you destroy the rule of law, which is what protects the people from the power. And what you do to destroy the rule of law is you kill the lawyers, because they're the ones who are the guardians of the rule of law. And these prosecutors who've corrupted themselves and have abused their power are destroying the rule of law. And hopefully now with this new day, there's an opportunity for that to change. And I think my case can be really instructional across the board, covering up FBI tapes, 98% of them, and covering up President Obama's 302s. He was interviewed by the FBI a day or two after I was arrested. His public statements contradicted the star witness against me. What do his 302s say? Those are FBI interviews. And the defense, me, has a right to have those to prepare my defense against the false accusations against me. And to this day, we still can't get those 302s. And the appellate courts have whitewashed and protected Obama. So, will that be revealed? That remains to be seen. But I think all of it should be exposed. We're supposedly a free society. And if you believe the truth is on your side, here's the great irony. The side that's covering up the truth is the side that's lying. And the side that keeps saying, play the truth, play more of the truth and all of the truth, that's the side that's telling the truth.
Politics is always about the future, never the past. I think Richard Nixon, my mentor, who you've admitted, someone you admire for his persistence, his resilience, always said, look forward, never look back. I've been out with you in Chicago, and I've seen how the people love you. There is today a groundswell of Chicagoans who want you to run for mayor because that city, once known as a city that works, is literally falling apart. But interestingly enough, the political establishment in Illinois, particularly the Democrats, are so concerned about the popularity of Rod Blagojevich that they specifically passed a law that said that any convicted felon may run for state or local office unless that convicted felon is named Rod Blagojevich, in which case you can't. That seems to me to be not only unconstitutional, but outrageous. What say you?
I agree. It is unconstitutional. It has to be. And it's breaking with the precedent that exists here in Illinois and in Chicago. Roger, we have a Chicago alderman who was a convicted bank robber. And he was convicted of a bank robbery back in the mid-1990s. And a few years after he got out of prison, he decided to run for the Chicago City Council, and he won. Now, he's actually a pretty good alderman. But the fact is that if a bank robber can run, how come I can't, when all I'm talking about is political deals in conversations that were initiated by then President-elect Obama? So it's very unconstitutional. And again, it's as if it's just what's happened in our country, I think, and what's happened too much with our leaders and our elected officials is they allow their partisan political priorities too often to overcome certain things that should be sacred in our society. And that's why our country correctly has lost trust with our institutions, certainly with politicians, and that's been true probably for the longest time. But with the media and with some of the Wall Street and with Silicon Valley and all these other places where the elites control things, the people get it, and they understand that you can't really believe or trust them anymore. And when they do things like this, identify me only, and deny me the right to run, but even worse, deny the people of Illinois and the people of Chicago to either vote for me or vote against me. You see, that's wrong, and they're forgetting the responsibility in democracy that, the people hire us and we're supposed to work for them, and they're the ones who have the right to make these decisions, not politicians, and certainly not prosecutors. So, no, I'd like to see it lifted. I'm not saying that I would necessarily run for office, Roger. I have personal issues, a loving wife who's devoted and faithful and has done a wonderful job raising our daughters when I was away, and she's made it clear, my wife, they've suffered because of the career that I've chosen. My wife, Patty, has said, Roger, that if I run for office again, I'll have to do that with my second wife. But I do think, whether I run for anything or not, that law should be reversed because it's a dangerous precedent. I mean, they start with me. Now they're going to pass a law and say Donald Trump can't run for office or J.D. Vance or whoever has the power. They then start passing laws where they identify one individual and say they can't run. I mean, that is so clearly, totalitarian-type politics that has no place in America.
It is absolutely anti-democratic. All right, our last question. I've seen in the international press how revered you are in Serbia. You are by far probably the most famous Serbian American in the world, perhaps, certainly the most famous Serbian American in politics. You're beloved in the country of your people. And there's some speculation that you might be interested in serving as ambassador. What say you?
Well, there's been some published reports and media coverage that that's a possibility. I haven't asked President Trump for that at all. And I was in Serbia last week, and I had a chance to see the economic miracle that's taking place in the homeland, the land that my father came from. President Vučić there is sort of like he reminds me a lot of President Trump. He's a real strong leader. He's very determined to get things done. He's presided over an economic miracle where the GDP in Serbia is the second highest in Europe this past year. Real wages for working people have gone up 270% there. It was a country that was bombed, Serbia, by the United States and NATO without UN approval back in 1999. The same thing we did to Serbia is what Russia's done to Ukraine. And then they took part of the country away from the Serbs. The Serbians and the Serbian people love America in spite of it all. In both world wars, Serbia was on the side of the United States, and yet Bill Clinton, Joe Biden, who was a war hawk back then as a senator, ignored all of that and decided to bomb a Christian country to pursue whatever their priorities were unlawfully. It was certainly a violation of international law. And yet the Serbs are rebuilding under President Vučić. It's an economic miracle, really. And they're building a beautiful waterfront along the Sava River. They're going to have the World's Fair in 2 years. So I'm really proud of the Serbs in my father's homeland and the place my father came from for the great recovery. And it's really a story that's kind of inspirational and an example to any of us who find ourselves down and out, that you don't have to just take it, never quit, pick yourself up and come back. And just as it is with individuals, nations do that too. And the Serbian nation is making a great comeback under President Vučić. And I hope that our country, the United States and Serbia, can develop stronger ties and develop a strategic partnership, because it is in our interests, because Serbia is the most prominent country in the Balkans, to have better relations there. I see Serbia, Roger, as sort of what Serbia could be to the United States and the Balkans is what Israel is to the United States and the Middle East.
All right, we have to leave it there. You can follow Rod Blagojevich at Real Blagojevich on X. Thank you, Governor, for joining us. And folks, hang on, because Joe Piscopo will be right along with Sundays with Sinatra.